The difference between account balance and equity is actually something small, Basically, account balance simply means the actual balance that you have in your account when there is not any running position. There is not any other trade which is running. And then equity simply means the balance that you have at a moment when there is either a running trade or no running trade. In other words, equity is the balance that you have with all the floating profits, all those scattered for, the spread, the swap fees, all of them catered for. So equity is the balance that you have at a moment, whether there is a running trade or no running trade. Let me just show you what I mean by those two terms there. If I open my MT5 on laptop, you can see these values here. My balance, actual balance is $9991.42 US, and then the equity is $9991.42. The balance is the same, and there is no running trade at the moment. But what would happen in case I take a position? For example, in case I buy, let's check the figures again. So the balance has not changed, but the equity is changing. So in other words, the equity is the balance that you have minus or plus the profit that you have at the moment. This is the floating profit or floating loss. So at the moment is a negative. So I expect my equity to be less than the balance. As you can see, the equity is less than the actual balance. But if I had profits, then the equity would be bigger than the balance. So equity is the actual balance that you have in the account minus or plus the floating profit or loss. Then you also subtract the broker fees, for example, the spread, and then the swap fees. Swap fees are the charges that they charge you if the trade runs into another day. So basically, account balance is the actual balance that you have in the account. Equity is the account balance that you have at any time t. At any time t, whether there is a running trade or no running trade. Of course, considering whatever I've talked about, the profit or loss, the floating profit or loss, and then the swap fees, and then the spread fees. So that's the difference between the two. And if I close this trade like I've done, it goes back. It will be equal again. On the phone, it is the same story. As you can see, account balance, equity, they're all the same. Shall be talking about margin later on. So if I take a position, let's say I have bought at this lot size. Let me just change the lot size maybe to 6.5. Assume that I've bought. Let's look at the figures. As you can see, the figures are changing. The figures are changing. In case I make a profit, the equity becomes bigger than the account balance. The balance doesn't change. The account balance only changes when I have realized a profit or loss. In other words, when the trade has been closed. But the equity is the balance that you have minus the floating profit or loss, minus the swap fees. I've talked about the swap fees, and then the commission to the broker. And that's all. Now, what I didn't talk about in the previous lesson is how do I close? I simply if I want to close this trade here, I simply swipe. I don't know if it's called swipe. You scroll backwards. You get this on the screen. You simply swipe to the left on that trade, and then you click here, and then you close at the bottom. Close with a profit, and then. So that's all for today about equity, and next we shall be looking at the leverage, then the margin, and so on. Have a nice evening, a nice morning, wherever you are.